The Free Agents podcast contains mature themes and adult language. Any discussion of gambling is for entertainment purposes only. Please abide by all laws in your location regarding gambling.
This should be our intro. Can we start?
This week on The Free Agents.
I mean, you'd rather have Ray Rice than Drew Brees in the first round in a league like that, definitely.
Will the defense be able to play that many minutes on the field and be effective?
At a cheaper price, if not right around the same price, while Segura is instantaneously going to be probably in the 20s.
Welcome to the Free Agent Sports Podcast. I'm your host this week, Joe Smarge, as always. With us in studio, Frenchy the Greek. How you doing today, French?
Good. How are you guys?
Oh, we're great. And joining us by Skype, as always, John Boudreau. LJ, how are you today?
I can't complain.
Sorry if I stumbled over your name a little bit. It's not a tough name.
That's okay. You should see how other people have mangled it in the past.
Hey, I got 6 vowels in my last name with 2 consonants.
I have a last name that used to be Serbian and written in weird, letters that we don't use in America. So
Boylo and Boudreau. We got similar last names.
Yeah, the chart of elements here, as Jerry Seinfeld said, to pronounce these last names.
So we are still counting down the day till we launch fantasy football. We have all our own personal drafts of various leagues, and we have the Free Agents Fantasy Football League. There's still room to apply, so certainly go on freeagentspodcast.com. There's a link right there that you see the banner. Sign up, and we'll also be sending those links around on Facebook and Twitter and stuff too. So keep an eye out there. But go in, send us your info, apply, and we will get back to you if you're chosen. And hopefully, in another week or so, we'll have the draft date set and we'll be getting ready to roll. And it'll be a lot of fun. The owners will have everybody on during the season. We'll keep the leaderboard up there, and of course, first prize, a $50 Amazon gift card. Good stuff. So LJ, what have you been? What are you looking at for football?
Time with our fantasy football this year. Running backs are in style again. Last year it was quarterbacks. This year it's running backs. They say there's plenty of quarterbacks out there that are going to throw for over 4,000 yards and for a lot of touchdowns. And don't gamble on a quarterback early and draft running backs. Get them while you can, because there's not a lot out there that are going to be able to deliver.
I agree with you there in terms of waiting for a quarterback at this point. It's just not the year to take, your Breeze, your Rodgers way too early. It's better served on another pick, and especially if you're in a PPR league, that is just paramount right now. The number one quarterback lines up in some rankings in the 20s in PPR leagues right now, which is pretty impressive for the receivers and the running backs this year.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, it's if you're in a PPR league, you don't want to waste it on a quarterback that's not going to be able to score you as many points as a running back who catches balls out of the backfield. I mean, you'd rather have Ray Rice than Drew Brees in the first round in a league like that, definitely. I mean, even later in the draft, guys like McFadden actually catch balls out of the backfield. Would you take him before you take a quarterback in a PPR league?
I like McFadden this year, and he falls into the sleeper kind of category. We were getting that a little bit last week with the quarterback and receiving position. But yeah, I mean, he's one. He no longer is that. It hasn't been lately where he was taken in first rounds and second rounds, and there's been question marks obviously with his health, but he's if you're in a PPR league and you can get this guy in, say, like the 4th round or something like that, it could be wonders for you, essentially is what it comes down to. And there's a few guys like this. I mean, I think Mikel LaShore is another one too. Reggie Bush is just a time bomb waiting to injure himself. I would just say Reggie Bush. Well, I don't know. I think Reggie Bush is the man right now in Detroit. He's going to have a better offensive line. He's going to have a better offense in general getting him the ball. He's not going to be the only option
on that team. So I think Reggie Bush is actually primed to have a better year than people think he's going to have.
Yeah, and I agree. If the health with the, it seems like it is every year. But he had a great year last year, and we saw what he can do.
I think Reggie's discovered HGH, so I think he'll be okay. But, I mean, the interesting guys are like LaShawn McCoy. You've got Chip Kelly in that offense that's going to be running at on high octane. He ran the fastest offense in college, put up a ton of points. And there's an article on Grantland that talks all about his offense and what they saw in that first game and broke it down and compared it to the Oregon footage. And basically you were looking at the same type of offense but upgraded for the NFL. He actually brought in coaches that knew the passing game in the NFL, and because that's where he was lacking, was his passing game. So he corrected for what he wasn't good at, and now he's ready to unleash his monstrosity of an offense on the NFL. And if you're going to draft fantasy backs accordingly, then you want LaShawn McCoy, and it looks like you want what's the other guy's name there?
Bryce Brown.
You want both of those guys. You want to look at those guys before you look at, say, Marshawn Lynch.
It's true, yeah. A committee approach is definitely a good idea for a few guys out there. I mean committee, but handcuff approach rather with guys like with McCoy. I think like David Wilson is another one where he could have this great year, but he might not get all the red zone touchdowns. But they have,
and if you're going to take
Wilson
you
high.
Definitely want to get Pierce too.
Yeah, Rice too is up in age. I mean, people are still saying Ben Tate and Arian Foster, but I think that's something I'm going to stay away from.
The Ben Tate story is always fun because you've seen him replace Foster, and he's not up to the task like Foster is. You definitely want to handcuff him, but if you have a shot to get a better back and handcuff him to Foster because you're worried about injuries, you're better off shooting for, one of Richardson, Daryl Richardson from the Rams. He has a better chance of doing better than, say, Ben Tate.
Mm-hmm.
At least from what I've seen, because I've had Foster in another league and I've always handcuffed Tate to him. And Tate, when Foster was out, Tate was not up to task.
Interesting, yeah. Dale Richardson, he's another one in our sleeper world too. I want to keep an eye on before the draft as the training camps or the preseason games are going down. That I want to see if someone emerges there more. Zach Stacy or Dale Richardson. Now, are they is Richardson? Is it his job to lose right now?
Well, you always see these little things like they release their depth chart and so and so was this number. And Richardson was third on their depth chart. But that doesn't mean anything because he's been seeing the bulk of carries during training camp. So you what you read and what you see are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
We'll know more as the preseason plays out, as they announce stuff. It's never good to draft a team early. You always want to set your draft for around Labor Day when you're doing a fantasy league. It's never good to draft early. There's too many variables moving during the preseason for you to really solidify a team.
Actually, and I said those exact things to the commissioner of my other league too. That's the funniest thing. Why is this starting the day after 4th of July?
Yeah, why are we drafting guys before like training camp?
It's a Friday.
Yeah,
it started on a Friday.
You might have drafted guys even before they were signed. There were some guys that weren't even signed going into training camp, and you had to worry about. I mean, you see these guys like Brandon Lloyd. Is he going to land somewhere? I mean, you're waiting for an injury to happen and for Brandon Lloyd to get signed. And then, depending on where he goes, he becomes a viable fantasy option.
Yeah,
he becomes a viable flex player.
Percy Harvin, another great example. How boned are you? I wonder who in that league of yours has Percy Harvin, and how pissed off is that guy?
Oh, I think it's more than the money they spent. I think it was like I feel bad.
I mean, I guess that's more realistic to actual football as an owner, or as a GM where, obviously you spend money on guys and sometimes you get burned. But it's harder to replace those guys.
It's part of the game, but when they don't even play a game and you get nothing out of them, then you feel even worse.
And man, Percy Harvin was set to have a big year too. He was looking so good last year before he got hurt. He was a ridiculous asset with a bad quarterback and was still putting up huge numbers. Just imagine what he was going to do in that offense in Seattle.
He was poised to be a fantasy monster, as people say.
Yeah, it would have been ridiculous. It would have made everybody on that team better too. Russell Wilson would have been a better option at fantasy quarterback if Percy Harvin had come out of camp healthy. Marshawn Lynch would just be a better option. With a guy like Percy Harvin, you're going to be in the red zone a lot more.
I got another one I want to ask you guys about, because I was having a conversation with someone earlier this week about a Jet, and we all hate the Jets around here. Sorry, any Jets fans. But Chris Ivory, now this guy's telling me, like, reaching out for him, is not an uncommon move in drafts right now. And I was kind of arguing against it. Now, he had good yards per carry numbers his whole career, but he's never been the guy. So there's really no sign of what he really is capable of. What do you guys think about this guy?
He was, like you said, underutilized in New Orleans. And the numbers that he put up in New Orleans, if you transfer it out to like a regular running back's numbers, would be pretty good. It'd be 100-plus yards. It'd be good yards per carry. He's a bigger back. He's 220 pounds, so he's going to be able to run between the tackles when it comes down into the goal line situation. Problem is the Jets aren't going to score a lot, so you can't count on him to be your number one running back. But as a number two running back, if you maybe grabbed Calvin Johnson, as a number two running back, Chris Ivory's not a bad option.
Yeah, I think he has to be. I put him pretty far down the list. I've been following some of the coverage of the Jets training camp and the preseason games, and most of what I've seen and the analysis coming out of there is that when they've given him the ball in the preseason games, he's looked pretty bad. He's definitely not sharp yet. So I would not go out on a limb for Chris Ivory. But I would definitely grab him in the late round as a backup running back. Maybe not even though a number two running back.
A 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
A low tier 3. Well, I mean, he went for a pretty penny in our dynasty league. And I was quite impressed.
I don't know what those guys want to get in that league because they don't know what they're doing over there.
And I think it was in like the $30 range. But granted, it was a free agent market. There wasn't a lot available. But still, I was like, you guys are really putting a lot of stock into this guy. And I was just surprised by it. And then having had that conversation earlier in the week, and that's, I just kind of want to see people. It's funny, people's opinions of different guys. And, Sean Green did 1,000 yards 2 years in a row for the Jets. The Jets have been miserable. So if he can do that,
exactly.
Ivory can do it.
That's what they're
right?
thinking is they're thinking Chris Ivory is a little better than a Sean Green. And if he's healthy, he's going to put up 1,000 yards. Like I said, he's a second option at running back.
Yeah, I just think he's really.
If you took a shot at a big receiver and maybe a big quarterback, if you went Calvin Johnson and you went Aaron Rodgers, if you went big at other positions, Ivory is one of those fallback running backs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my gut says that he's just too soft. It's one thing to have good numbers when you're running by committee and being like essentially the second or third guy there. But when they put all the when you're the number one running back, and we don't know I really don't know what the Jets offense is going to be this year. I mean, they still have this quarterback. Well, it's not controversy, but this competition at quarterback going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there's going to be some weeks where Sanchez plays and other weeks where he doesn't, and it's going to go on all year. And I really don't. I think for fantasy, you want to stay away from most of the Jets. Really, it's that bad. I mean, this is a team on its way to collapse. This is a team where Rex Ryan could get fired halfway through the season if things don't go well early on. So I don't know. It's hard for me to want it. And it's not a personal thing. As much as I hate the Jets, you can objectively look at this team and say, hey, this is not a good team. Like, they're a mess.
Now they haven't been, but they run the ball. That's what they do. That's what Rex Ryan does. And
they
he has
did
an
when they had
offensive
Sean
line
Green
that's
out
actually
there.
able to block for him. It's just that he has a horrible quarterback.
Well,
So
right, but
again, it's going to come down to you're going to get some production out of him, and you use him as a backup plan. He's not going to be. You don't want to be like, okay, I've got Chris Ivory and Eddie Lacy, and I'm ready for the fantasy season. No, you want to make sure that you've got a good option
Let's
first,
go.
and then you want this guy as your fallback, and that's going to get you 10 points. That's not going to hurt you. And if he's going to be the starting running back, you don't have to worry about a running back by committee. You don't have to take D'Angelo Williams and worry about, being poached by other running backs like Jonathan Stewart. But you can sit there and you can count on Chris Ivory being the number one guy there every week.
That's a good point. I mean, job security. Think about it like that.
job
I
security.
mean, in a sense, I'm not saying it's the utmost like job security, position of all these running backs, but like it's a little bit of something, and I think that's why these people see the value in this guy. Like, is there anyone else there battling him for this right now?
Not really, no.
No,
there's nobody that has his skill level that's on the field with him. It's his job to lose.
Well, hope the health holds up for him.
Yeah.
Right, so another one.
I mean, and right around the same rankings, you have DeMarco Murray, Reggie Bush, Ryan Matthews, Eddie Lacy, Lamar Miller,
Yep.
Le'Veon Bell. I mean, after Ivory in the rankings are guys that you don't know are going to be able to get full time playing time. I mean, is Ryan Matthews really going to make it through a season? Eddie Lacy is going to be sharing time with Franklin. Lamar Miller in Miami, you don't know what's going on down there. The Steelers are going to have 3 running backs. Ahmad Bradshaw is a twisted ankle away from being out for 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Travers Green Ellis is looking at being challenged by Giovanni Bernard. So you have very few options after that. So
Yeah.
I mean, Ivory's a guy that's going to get you 80 yards, 100 yards each week. He's not going to get the ball in the end zone much, but he's going to get you 10 points.
Yeah, and you're right. And these guys, a lot of those guys you just mentioned, they're all grouped in that same round, like about 4th to say, 7th, 8th. You're going to see all these guys sitting there, and it's this is the type of pick where this could make or break a fantasy season. But based on what you need and how the player performs too. But it's a decision making.
Yeah, well, it boils
right
down to
those are the tough picks, I think, this year.
Yeah, well, all those guys, like you said, they're all kind of in the same, same category. They're all pretty, fairly even. And exactly what you said, French, is that it's all going to boil down to which of those guys exceeds expectations. Which of those players busts out and plays above where they're currently ranked in the fantasy rankings. Whoever gets that guy, whoever picks that guy, is going to be at the top of towards the top of their league going through the year.
Now, you brought up Lamar Miller.
You're
too.
rolling the dice after guys that have solidified spots on teams. You're rolling the dice on people.
Yeah.
It's a literal gamble. When you draft someone like Adrian Peterson, you're looking at a guy that's got very little risk and with good reward.
And
that's why he goes number one in the thing. But as you look down the thing, you're looking at risk versus reward. You're looking at guys, okay, you're going to take a flyer on Jonathan Franklin, or you're going to grab a proven entity like D'Angelo Williams. I mean, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
There's the proven versus the not proven, and that's basically the decisions we're making. We're looking at numbers and then we're rolling dice. And there's guys that love to gamble when they draft a fantasy team.
You brought up Lamar Miller, and I think he's an interesting one too. And you talk about schedule, and they play a pretty easy against the run schedule. The Dolphins do, so that's why some people kind of like Lamar Miller here as well. I personally not going to go too far out of my way for this guy, but you got to think it's between him and Daniel Thomas now. I mean, maybe something could emerge. But the fact that there's a committee there, it's going to be hard to garnish the value.
And an ugly committee at that. I mean, if you're going to gamble on a committee, I'd rather gamble on the Packers committee of Lacy and Franklin. You got 2 good young running backs, and if you're going to take Lacy, then you got to take Franklin. And one of them's going for $3 and the other one's going for $9. So I mean, those are the, and that's in non-points per reception. That's just the regular listing on ESPN right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you go and you grab both, right? You stash, you definitely make a play for Franklin if you're making a play for Lacey. Because one of those guys is going to shake out, and there's your reward, because that's an offense that's just puts up huge numbers. Points per reception, both of those guys have a chance to take a screen pass all the way to the house and help you kill 1 week. So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about, risk versus reward. A guy like Chris Ivory is not going to is never going to help you win a week.
You're right.
But he's going to give you points every week. And a guy like, Jonathan Franklin can win you a week, but then get you 0 points in another week.
What do you make of the Bengals? Dax, Giovanni, and Ben Jarvis.
Are we skewed by what we're watching on Hard Knocks?
Yeah. And what about,
and all the hype around Giovanni Bernard? Is he more hype than he is actual substance?
There is a lot of hype. He's climbing up. Not I don't say he's climbing up boards, but he's getting a bit more attention now. I even ended up taking him in the 2 mocks I did this week, in the 14th pick and the 10th pick. I ended up with Giovanni in both of them. Now, not planned, but it just kind of happened.
Well, if you're Bernie Kosar, your team's awful, French. I mean, really.
All right.
Does he still have a job? Did Bernie lose his job?
Around the same point and around the same value. Do you take a Bryce Brown or do you take a Giovanni Bernard?
I like Giovanni at this point.
I'm all in on Chip Kelly. All in on Chip Kelly. So
doesn't that involve McCoy?
That's associated with the Eagles, I'm going to draft this year.
I understand. But won't that entail McCoy either failing or McCoy having an injury for Bryce Brown?
No, because he likes to line up people all over the place, and he likes to bring in. He does multiple formations. So it's not Bryce Brown, and as we've seen in last year, McCoy ended up getting hurt, so we don't know exactly how healthy he's going to be. And Chip Kelly runs an offense that's on the field and runs around and does crazy stuff, so injuries are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you draft Michael Vick, he's going to put up some numbers this year in that offense. You better get Nick Foles. And for the hell of it, if Vick goes down, you better grab Barkley too. Because in that offense there's going to be a lot of moving parts and a lot of learning. So they're going to put up big numbers, but it may hurt them.
Now, since we're on the Philadelphia thing, I got that text you'd sent me earlier in the week, and it was funny about what you said about You said you read an article about take Philly's D late because they average they'll average highest plays per game or something. They'll be right up there with the Patriots and the Broncos in terms of plays per game. Is that what you were saying? And thus, the other team not on the field as much?
Exactly. You can take advantage of that. And they're going to put up big numbers. So if you get rewarded for interceptions, their guys are going to be getting a lot of interceptions because teams are going to be playing from behind against a team that puts up a lot of numbers. It's one of those things. Right. Those are going to be teams way behind, especially if they're playing teams with bad quarterbacks. If they're in that, if they got Brandon Whedon trying to come back from 21 down, you're looking at a good situation. They're going to get those, because they're going to be bringing blitzes because they're free to do it because they're up by a lot. It's going to get you some numbers. You may give up a few points though, depending on It's give and take, but I would take a flyer on those defenses, like the Patriots defense. Why not?
My only worry about, I think you're definitely onto something. My one concern about Eagles D goes back to their offense is that if they are this fast-paced offense and they're not eating up a lot of the clock, will the defense be able to play that many minutes on the field and be effective? I mean, defenses get worn out too. That's that is the flip side of that equation.
If they're not there yet, they'd have to be there yet. But this is a defense that's going to be on the board as a waiver pickup after your draft.
They're potentially a very big sleeper D. They're definitely going to be there for you at the end of the draft or on waivers. Yeah.
That I love Arizona's defense this year. Love it. And I know they're going up against the West there, and they have to play Seattle twice, and and San Francisco twice, but San Francisco's going to have trouble throwing the ball this year. And I think Seattle's going to kick a lot of field goals this year. And I think the Arizona defense, with the addition, they're going to have Peterson. And then from what everybody says, the Honey Badger's been killing it in camp. As a scout said, best athlete in camp right now. Best player in camp right now. So you're looking at an explosive, and if it's defensive special teams, the Honey Badgers are going to be returning kicks along with Peterson. So Arizona is if you're late there, if you're sitting there and you haven't taken a defense and you're in round whatever, grab the Arizona defense. Take it late.
And there's a very, very high chance that isn't even going to be a team taken in most drafts.
Yeah, they get left out every year as well.
I'm making a note. I'm like taking defense late right now.
Don't spend.
Why would you wait? Arizona's the 16th ranked defense. They're not even $1. They don't even get the dollar designation from the
rankings,
auction designation.
They get the 0.
The last team to get $1 designation is the Packers defense at 10. That's it. Everything after that, you're not even supposed to spend on. You're not even supposed to spend on the Ravens, the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Falcons. You're supposed to spend on none of those.
Yeah,
Then so the top 3 are really, the top 4 or 5, Seattle, San Fran, Denver, Houston, even Bears. I think they'll be declined. But
that's the same thing, just like with a kicker. I mean, every year when I draft, I don't even pick a kicker. I try to pick up some other value sleeper pick that no one really cares about.
You know who's always there at the end is Janikowski.
Well, you don't even have to
count
do
on
that.
him for some long.
The flying pierogi.
LJ, there are great kickers on waivers. There are great kickers that haven't even been don't get signed and end up replacing a kicker in the NFL like the first week.
It's points you can always plug in.
Greg Zuerlein, who's not even rated as he's a dome kicker. Greg Zuerlein for the Rams. He's a zone. He kicks in a dome, and he can kick. He's got a good leg, and that's a team that kicks a lot of field goals. And he's not even. They don't even have him marked as a dollar guy.
Yeah.
He's the 12th ranked kicker, so you can get him without even trying.
Yeah, I don't
get any of these guys without even trying.
I do not carry a kicker until literally like the last minute. I will go on waivers before the week.
No, I'll draft a kicker.
One. No.
I'm not gonna draft some schmuck that's not gonna play. I'm not gonna draft
Gostowski, and I was happy with it. It helped me with my first place finish, and I had Seattle's defense too, which went a little later, but not by any means am I going to take Seattle in the 7th round this year, like someone will, some idiot will. But it's a passing league now. There's no point to take the defense unless it's a very specific fine-tuned league where you're getting.
Yeah, there are some leagues that and this was more popular, say 10 years ago, where you have all these crazy special points for all the weird defensive things that almost never happen. It's like you got to pick the team that gets the most safeties because you have a league where the safeties worth like 6 points or something stupid. But in most leagues,
we're talking about
you're not
standard
doing
scoring leagues. But I got this outrageous league. My buddy, we draft individual defensive players.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Interception returns for touchdowns, 8 points.
And then you end up winning.
Oh, and he gives like 5 points for any field goals over 50 yards. So when you go into this league, you gotta okay. I'm going to take a guy that kicks long field goals, and I'm going to take a defense I'm going to take defensive players that can return touchdowns in sacks. For some reason, he gives 5 points for sacks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got a love of rewarding big plays. Like he rewards us big for 50-plus yard touchdown runs, but gives you nothing for points per reception.
That's a lot of fun, and I think a league like that, it kind of. Because a lot of those plays are just so random, it's a lot more chance and luck. Yeah, you're rewarding
literally
people.
The lottery ticket league, I like to call it.
It's fun, though, especially for casual players.
Scratching lottery tickets each week. All right, who's going up against the bad quarterback? All right, I'm going to pick up those cornerbacks this week because they have the potential to return a touchdown for a pick 6 because Jake Locker sucks right now. Or, Brady went down and what's his name is in there, Ryan Mallett throwing interceptions on out patterns.
Yeah.
Driving Bill Belichick crazy. and basically you take whatever defensive backs are going up against the Patriots each week.
Yeah.
Those are the types of, dice rolls you make in those type of leagues.
Well, we're definitely fired up.
Kickers, going back to kickers, I just like to take dome kickers like Matt Bryant Akers is, with Detroit right now, and Bailey in Dallas. And I like to take guys that play in warm weather like Janikowski or whoever the Chargers kicker is.
I always look for my favorite kicker, and he still play. I don't know if he's on a team this year. Usually he starts the year as a free agent. John Casey, who's notorious for kicking long field goals for variety teams. And last year, I don't even remember who signed him, but I grabbed him like the second week. Whatever kicker I ended up with was a bum. And he was just sitting around in his backyard waiting for a call. And
well, he's sitting around in his backyard again because I don't see him even in the rankings right now.
But keep an eye on him because every year some team, they have, they got to get rid of their kicker doesn't pan out or goes sour. And this guy just comes out of nowhere and kicks the ball everywhere. So that's another kicker I always keep an eye out for as we go into the season. And this week, Frenchy and I will be keeping an eye out on the entire Patriots team, including the kicker and punter and everyone else. We're going to the Patriots Tampa Bay game in Foxborough on Friday.
Preseason,
yeah, obviously.
Preseason game number 2.
So that should be exciting. It'll be interesting to see all the Tim Tebow mania. There's been a lot of talk about what we've seen from him in the last game and in practice, and how they'll utilize him.
He looked a little disheveled.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
Team as a whole, though, LeGarrette Blount and that run, that was an amazing run. It's going to be interesting to see how the depth chart lines up. It's a lot of stock in Ridley. A lot of people are putting a lot of fantasy stock into Ridley. And
Vereen was lining up at wide receiver,
exactly.
And from what
I read,
a
beautiful catch.
He's going to line up at wide receiver as a plan, as like part of their offense.
Yeah, that's a huge fantasy play. If they do that and he's eligible as a running back in your league still,
maybe he
that's huge because now you're going to you can still stack a bunch of wide receivers and effectively have an extra wide receiver because that's essentially what he's doing. So that could be a nice play if it pans out that way.
Hi folks, did you know that Argo brand cornstarch has been the chef's choice in cornstarch for over 75 years? And you know what else? Our own Frenchy the Greek is a 5-star chef with over a decade of experience. So tell us, Frenchy, why is Argo the chef's choice in cornstarch?
I apply Argo liberally throughout the day to reduce chafing and prevent irritation. Nothing keeps me as comfortable all day long.
So there you have it, Argo, the chef's choice for over 75 years.
Argo cornstarch. It promotes dryness.
All right, we're back with the Free Agent Sports Podcast, continuing our discussion here about all your fantasy sleepers. We're doing running backs and tight ends this week. Did talk a little bit about Tim Tebow too and the Patriots, but getting back to the tight ends.
Talking about Tim Tebow, I think he's going to be a piece of that offense. Speaking of tight ends, that would be the spot he would be playing in. If I was Bill Belichick, I would be trying to hypnotize Tim Tebow to convince him to become an NFL tight end. He's built for it. He's got speed. Can he catch the ball? Those are the questions you need answered. And if the kid gives up his dream of being a quarterback, he'd be a good something else in the NFL. He's just a good athlete.
Yeah, well, they haven't been able to convince him to play another position so far, LJ. I mean, what we've seen so far in preseason and training camp is they have, kind of what most teams have tried to do with Tim Tebow, where they have some different formations for him to line up in and sort of keep the keep the opponent, the defense, guessing about where the ball's really going, who's carrying it and stuff. We saw a fair bit of this in the last preseason game. So what I think is going to happen, and this is Bill's typical MO, is the more you see of these plays in the preseason, the less likely they're actually going to use them. In other words, this is more like the Doug Flutie drop kick or a fake punt where they roll this play out maybe once or twice the whole year, usually in situations that don't matter too much, just to keep the opponents off balance. And so if you're a Patriots fan and you're worried that Tim Tebow is going to take snaps away from Tom Brady, you can stop worrying. You can rest assured that Tom Brady is the best player on their team.
He played more this game in particular because Mallett left with the injury in the second. Mallett was going to play the entire second quarter. Brady had the first, and I'm not sure what their plans were going to be for Tebow for that game, but I think he definitely did a little bit more than they expected him to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here, let me throw a little fun little conspiracy out there. You guys ever hear of the A11 offense?
No.
It's basically run by small high schools and small colleges to try and get an advantage when they're playing the bigger schools. And one of these schools basically ran this offense last year, and I forgot who they knocked off. It was like a bigger Texas school got beaten by a smaller Texas school that was running the A11 offense. It's 2 quarterbacks on the field at the same time.
Yeah, it's just pure misdirection. Like, you don't know.
Pure misdirection. Now, do you think Belichick has something up his sleeve like that?
I think he does, LJ, but I just don't think you're going to see it that frequently. Like, don't expect
him. We won't see it
him
in the preseason, definitely. So,
well,
and if they're going to break it out, this is something they've been working on privately, in a quiet room somewhere. With what went on in the off season with Gronkowski and Hernandez not being there, Belichick is either going to go conservative and run, or he's going to try something, something very different that shakes things up. And I'm waiting to see. It's definitely got my curiosity up.
Well, we will be watching. Frenchy and I will be watching on Friday. It'll be interesting to see how much Tim Tebow we see Friday night. But who knows? Getting back to the tight ends and running backs, though.
Well, tight ends is where the value is. I was telling French, this is where you're going to find some guys that can make a big difference on your team this year. There's some guys that are going to be in offenses that catch passes and are going to score a lot more than they've done in the past. And this is where you're going to find value. Of course, everybody knows about Jimmy Graham, but how high do you take him? Where do you take Jimmy Graham, French?
I mean, in a PPR league, I wouldn't mind taking him if you still don't have an elite receiver and you drafted a good running back. I don't think it's extreme to go out and stretch and take him over, a guy like Victor Cruz, or depends how you're feeling about Randall Cobb. But, guys like Julius Jones, Demarius Thomas, Brandon Marshall, AJ Green are all gone. Like Jimmy Graham might not be a bad idea for you in a PPR league. In a non-PPR league, you might be better off waiting, just because you can get so many of these other guys at such a lower position. It really is. Graham is in his own tier. Then you have Gonzalez and Witten in a second tier. And then after that, I don't want to say it's wide open, but Martellus Bennett, I think, comes into
Bennett's not even ranked up there. In the tier after Gonzalez is Witten, who in a PPR league is huge because he catches a ton of passes.
Yeah.
Vernon Davis has explosiveness, so we don't know what's going to happen there. He's another guy that's been lining up at wide receiver. They literally have a second tight end now on the field in San Francisco, and Davis is becoming kind of their slot guy. They've been lining him up in different formations there, so that could be crazy there. That's one of those roll the dice. Vernon Davis, is he really going to be? Is he going to have that explosive year? Is he going to be putting up those huge numbers?
With no Crabtree, they're going to be looking.
And then right after those guys is Kyle Rudolph and Owen Daniels and Greg Olsen and Gates, kind of like the old reliables.
Yeah. That's where it gets interesting, too. Like we said, we were saying we're going to have these tough picks in the 4th, 8th round with running backs. Well, it's going to be the same thing with your tight end, and it's almost worthwhile to take 2 guys if you get these lesser tier guys. I mean, if you're in a league that you can start 2, then it might not be a bad move. But
at the end of one of my mocks, I went tight end. Like, all right, I didn't go for any big tight ends. I went big at running back, and I went big at all the other, and then I let tight end, defense, kicker, all the other stuff go. And then right at the end of the draft, you're able to take guys like Jared Cook, Jermichael Finley, Marcellus Bennett, Pettigrew, Dustin Keller, Fleener.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that going down this list. Ed Dixon's going to be taking that Dennis Pitta spot in Baltimore, and he's a big kid that can catch passes. You got, of course, Tyler Eifert in Cincinnati, who's this big kid from Notre Dame that's supposed to be able to catch anything you throw within 20 yards of him. And then the kid Hausler down in Arizona is like a deep sleeper pick.
There's a couple of these deep sleepers. They're Jordan Cameron, Luke Stocker, and Hausler. They're all kind of interesting guys. Haven't done anything ultra supreme yet, but they could still potentially do something. I kind of like all of them on the same level.
And then there's a guy coming in at mid-season that is Ben Roethlisberger's binky, but he's not going to be back until probably week 7. But Heath Miller, he was putting up big numbers before he got hurt. And what's his name? Oh my God, why did I forget the offensive coordinator there? The former Kansas City coach, Smarge, that had all the controversy. Pioli, Pioli. What's the guys that had all the controversy with Pioli?
Todd Haley.
Yes, Todd Haley loves tight ends.
We ragged on Todd Haley for weeks last year. No, we can't even remember his name.
We did rank on Todd Haley for weeks last year. But he is the offensive coordinator, and like I said, it's one of those things that you keep an eye on. Heath Miller could put up, if he was normally healthy, he'd be up there with right below Vernon Davis spot, probably, in the regular rankings if he wasn't hurt. I was reading an article about the Bears. This guy was at the Bears training camp, and they were throwing out the fade patterns to Bennett in the end zone, just one after the other, just catching them. And then he's standing there with the receivers, and he's 6'3" plus. Brandon Marshall's 6'3" plus. They're all tall, big guys that Cutler's going to be throwing to in a contract year, with a coach that loves to throw. You really can't argue about how good this is going to be for them.
They're going to be collecting points, yeah. And another, I hate to go back to the PPR league, but another one was this guy, Brandon Myers in the Giants now, caught 74 balls last year, and could be same thing, same situation. They're looking for someone to step up at tight end on the Giants. They haven't had that option in seasons past, really.
And Eli loves to throw the ball. He's gonna be dishing it around there. He's another one of those quarterbacks that you can rely on too later in the later rounds. If you miss out on a big quarterback, you know what you're gonna get from him, and Brandon Myers is gonna benefit from that. I like him he's a $2 flyer basically.
Yeah. Flyer.
And Jared Cook in St. Louis. He's one of those guys, too, that everybody says is going to break out. They say that they've got a lot of stuff set to be run for him. And if Sam Bradford can become anything like he used to be, he had a bad season last year, but the kid can throw. He's going to be getting the ball out there. Him and Tavon Austin. Jared Cook and Tavon Austin are late-round flyers you can take in that St. Louis lottery, I like to call it. Him, Richardson, that late-round St. Louis Rams lottery. Wow. I think we nailed the football stuff.
Yeah, we got
I got a trade offer in my fantasy baseball league.
Ooh, some baseball action. It's been kind of a slow week overall. So tell us, LJ, what's your trade action here? What is it?
Steven Strasburg and Brian Dozier, and they want to extract Gene Segura out of me. And this is a keeper league, and I've got Segura for $7, and Strasburg, if I decide to keep him, would cost me $31.
Don't do it.
Is Strasburg that much more valuable than Segura at $7? Is really my question that I need to answer for myself.
I'd say no, because I think there's still a chance you can get Strasburg at a cheaper price, if not right around the same price, while Segura is instantaneously going to be probably into the 20s at least this year, because of it's a shortstop position. It's not a good offensive position, the middle infield these days. I mean, this is a guy, you can keep this guy for 2 years at $7. That's huge. That is just huge. Right?
I didn't refuse it right off the bat, but I almost did. I almost just said nope.
Well, I mean, if you're in a position where you think this is going to help your team win right now, then do it. But like I said, I'm right there with you in sell mode right now. We got 4 days of this deadline coming up, and I'm trying to make moves for keepers for next year. Yeah. That's I have no other play right now. I can't get out of the hole. It's Roto. It's the thing with Roto League.
It's
thing you hate
so
about
difficult.
Royals.
Once you get buried, I got so buried at the beginning of the second half, I was like, I can't get out of this. I'm totally screwed. My pitching staff had me up there for a minute, but my hitting just has stayed in the cellar. I couldn't get out of the cellar because I got no hitting. With Cano, I had Cano, Adrian Beltre go into cold streaks, and then I lost Ryan Braun. So I really was just crippled.
Yeah, you got hosed.
Yeah, Mike Trout can only do so much. And Segura's been colder in the second half. He was definitely a lot hotter in the first half of the year. But, I mean, with Ryan Braun being out of that Brewers lineup, he suffered too. I've suffered right along with the Brewers, being stuck with two of them.
Well, LJ, I tried to warn you.
Yeah. I know, but there was nothing I can do. I had already. If you had warned me at the beginning of the season, that would have been better.
As far as this trade goes for you, LJ, and knowing what I know about that league, I think it's a good non-trade for you. I think it's going to do better for you to stick your opponent with that money for the next year than giving up your affordable keeper.
Yeah, I'm still not necessarily sold on keeping them for $31. I mean, that money could be better spent elsewhere.
And there you go. And if whoever's trying to trade him ends up putting him back out there, doesn't hang on to him because of the money, then he may be available for you to grab. So I think it'd be a better play for you, LG, not to make the deal.
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards keeping him because you're not going to get that kind of value at shortstop.
There are some,
and I can definitely spend elsewhere. That's like huge value right there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for pitchers too, right now there are a few. This is kind of the time of the year where guys that are in the bullpen come in and start starting, or they have been for a few weeks and they finally figure something out. And like last year, it was kind of Marco Estrada. I remember bringing him up, and he just had a torrid second half starting in August. I was saying on this, like, go pick this guy up, and there's a few guys out there kind of like that right now, and like Tyson Ross, to name one. He is over in San Diego right now.
Yep.
Chad Gowden, I think he's just about over 100 inning pitch mark, but he gets about a K per inning. In San Francisco, kind of it's the thing under the radar, owned in deeper leagues. And Andrew Albers, who's only pitched, I believe, 2 games so far for the Minnesota's Twins, but he's yet to give up an earned run in about 17 innings. So,
gee, look who owns him in our league.
I just grabbed Albers. Yeah, but these are guys that are going to be available.
He's had 2 good starts. Doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but
no.
But he eats up innings. Good Lord.
Yeah,
he hasn't given up a run. Those are 2 big starts by him against teams that can hit. I mean, Kansas City and Cleveland haven't been slouches when it comes to hitting. So
Kansas City is ahead of the Yankees in the wild card race. I don't know if anyone realized that, but I just kind of saw that the other day and was like, "Holy cow!" Like, wow, this is serious.
Every time the Yankees and the Royals are mentioned in the same breath, I always just blame it on the pine tar.
Always blame it on the pine tar a little bit.
Blame it on the pine tar. George Brett is the hitting coach now, so it's definitely a pine tar situation. I would be checking for pine tar all over that Kansas City clubhouse.
4 games back they are. So
we got to lay the ball across the plate and see because the pine tar can't be past a certain point. That's just a memory from when I was a kid watching that pine tar game.
Yeah, the Royals have definitely been heating it up. They bested the Red Sox 2 out of 3 in that series over the past weekend or so, and
James Shields for Will Myers. Is the trade actually going to work out, and the Royals actually going to make the playoffs? Because that's why they did. They traded him for a guy that's just a massive potential superstar for a guy that's a number 1 starter.
Oh,
but go.
Bruce Chen is emerging as a really good pitcher right now.
For the moment.
Which is interesting.
Anytime you doubt Bruce Chen, he can hear all the doubt. So as soon as people are like really hating on him, that's when he wins. And then when you decide to take a chance on him for your team, that's when he turns to dirt. And that's Bruce Chen right there.
He had
I did not, LJ.
He's turned it on of late. He's had, I think, 4, 5, 6 straight quality starts here. 3, 4 earned runs in his last 6 starts. Irving Santana's pitching better than he had been last year. He's doing very well for the team. James Shields kind of doing his thing. So it's not a bad 3 guys there. And that trade they made to get Justin Maxwell at the deadline was not much of a, didn't seem like much at the time, but this guy's been tearing it up, Maxwell. And this is someone, I mean, his average on a season doesn't reflect it, but his average over the last 30 days is shooting up. His points have gone up about 20, he's averaging about 20 points in the last 10 games. He's definitely supplying them with some much needed offense.
Well, as of right now, the Royals are 4 games out of the wild card.
Yeah, it's scary to hear that the Yankees are a game and a half behind the Royals in the wild card right now. But then again, the Yankees are still the 6th team in the pecking order of the wild card.
Yeah.
So
they're 6 over. Yeah, they're 6 games out in the whole thing.
And
then you have to go
preparing myself for a non-postseason.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to face that 1-game elimination game too in the wild card now, and that really changes the landscape of things.
We have Hiroki Kuroda for that 1 game, so Hiroki Kuroda's been lights out. The only pitcher that's been more lights out over the last 5 starts has been Kershaw. Kershaw has just been ridiculous, but Hiroki Kuroda has been awesome for the Yankees. The only bright shining star in our horrible season has been Hiroki Kuroda.
That's not saying a lot either.
Exactly, but he's had a good year. He's been the guy. He's the guy we can count on to stop a losing streak.
Well, I think that's probably going to wrap it up for us, guys. You guys have any other pressing sports news this week? Not really.
Nothing else that's beating on my brain.
We can save it till next week. Baseball isn't going anywhere.
Well, join us next week. We will have Frenchy and I will have our impressions from Patriots preseason, so we can talk a little more about that. We'll see what happens there, and we'll be getting ready to announce draft day hopefully for our draft for our league. And there's, like I said earlier in the show, there's still plenty of time to sign up, put an application in, and we may choose you to be an owner in the Free Agents Fantasy Football League. You can win a $50 Amazon gift card for first place. And every owner of our teams will be featured on our podcast on somewhat of a rotating basis. So also a chance for you to get your voice out there a little bit and talk about things we love to do like fantasy football. So if you want to join in the league or follow us on any of your favorite social media sites, just go to our website, freeagentspodcast.com, and click the link for the Fantasy Football League to apply, and click all our other links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Definitely, if you have an iPhone or iPod and you listen on iTunes, definitely go into iTunes. Give us some stars. Give us 1 star. Leave a review. Like we always say, good or bad comments are always welcome.